Hey, what is up all you do-it-yourselfers? My name is Dylan Taylor. This is Dylan's DIY Workshop, and today I'm going to be showing you how to polish your headlights with nothing but sandpaper and water. You're going to want to do this if your headlights are starting to turn yellow or if they are all fogged up. You'll also need to do something like this to pass a safety on a used vehicle if you're buying a car in Ontario. It's also just a lot safer to have clear headlights so that other cars can see you and you can see where you're going. So I started off by taping off the car so that I didn't end up scraping it with the sandpaper. I didn't want to mess up the paint. And I started with some 320 grit sandpaper, which was not necessary for my car. It was not pitted enough and it was not yellow enough. You're only going to need to start with a grit that low in extreme cases. You should be fine to start off with 800 to 1500 grit, somewhere in there, depending on how bad it is scraped up and how bad it is turned yellow. Also, if you're going to start with a grit so low, you definitely need to make sure that you take your time and make sure that it has a uniform look to it between each grit of sandpaper, and also don't jump more than about 100 grit between different types of sandpaper, because you'll end up getting to a higher grit and realizing there's still scratches from one of the rougher ones that you didn't get rid of because you didn't use all the different grits of sandpaper. That's why it's best to start with what you need to start with. Another important thing to remember is to use waterproof sandpaper, because if you use regular woodworking sandpaper, the grit will start to come off when it gets wet and it will just make a mess and you'll need to go through a ton of sandpaper. And to keep the dust down and the heat down, you're going to want to keep it soaked the entire time that you're doing this, and that could be with any type of spray bottle or even just pouring water over top of it. You just want to make sure that it's soaked. You also want to wipe it down and clean it dry between each different type of sandpaper you use. This way you can check to see if there are any extra scratches or whether or not it's a uniform look to the entire thing, and you're looking for a uniform haze across the whole thing. It's best to make controlled circles when you're using the sandpaper, that way you don't see any lines or scratches when you're done with it. And again, I've only went through 2 different grits of sandpaper. That was 400 that I just used, and it is cleared up quite a bit. You can see the yellow's already completely gone from the lens, but you can also see that it's starting to fog up a bit once it is not wet. That's why it's so important to go all the way up in the grits of sandpaper. Whether or not you started at 300 or whether you started at 1500, you're just going to want to keep going up in the grits until when it's dry it is clear, or at least as close to clear as possible, because once it is, you can take and buff it with any type of buffing compound that has equally or higher grit than the grit of sandpaper that you used. I have done this many times before to my headlights, and that step is one of the most important, and that is the buffing step. It really makes it glassy clear. Right here I was using 8000 grit sandpaper, which I was hoping would do the same thing because that's all I had on hand at the time, but it didn't quite do the same thing. It wasn't as smooth and as clear as I wanted it to be, but that is all you need to do, and you can just apply that with a rag if you had buffing compound. But the yellow is for sure gone, and the headlight is better off than it was. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for supporting me and allowing me to keep creating these videos, especially the top tier Patreon supporters, Randy, Robinbird, and Mike Maxwell. If you guys enjoy these videos or learn anything new, I do encourage you to check out my Patreon page and consider supporting there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are new, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please share this video with a friend, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a big old thumbs up. We'll see you guys all next time. Peace out.